Life is good in Hashem. Hashem loves you all. You are Creation 13. I'm Adam Bay. And today I want to talk to you about Pandora's box and the black cube and Saturn. These things I've been doing research on, or I felt I needed to do research on them. And it's quite interesting. My theory and thought is that each one of us, or this planet itself, is trapped in its own Pandora's box or a black cube, kind of like Hellraiser. um, and this right here in your heart's desire is what traps you into your own torment, or that where you perceive, on how you perceive your reality. When I was doing some research on Saturn, Saturn is, I guess, the god of time. Time did not exist until Saturn took over Earth. So, when time was created, it allowed our heart's desires and our minds to wander and create a past and a future, because the present is right now. And with the present, I looked at, like Christmas or birthdays or special gift, we're giving a person a box, and when they open that box, there's a physical item in that box, and for that split second, that item is worshipped, because they're like, ooh, look what this is. They're opening Pandora's box, and I found that quite interesting. So I'm gonna try not to jump too much into this, but I'll see what happens. So I'll read Pandora's box and we'll go from there. Pandora's box is an artifact in Greek mythology, taken from the myth of Pandora's creation. The box was actually a large jar given to Pandora, which contained all the evils of the world. Pandora opened the jar and all the evils flew out, leaving only hope inside once she had closed it again. Today, the phrase "to open Pandora's box" means to perform an action that may seem small or innocent, but that turns out to have severely detrimental and far-reaching consequences. In classical Greek mythology, Pandora was the first woman on Earth. Zeus ordered Hephaestus something to create her, so he did, using water and earth. Sounds like the creation of Eve. The gods endured her with many gifts. Athena clothed her. Aphrodite gave her beauty. Apollo gave her musical abilities, and Hermes gave her speech. According to Hesiod, when Prometheus stole fire from heaven, Zeus took vengeance by presenting Pandora to Prometheus' brother Epimetheus. Pandora opens a jar containing death and many other evils which were released into the world. She hesitated to close the container, but the whole contents had escaped except for one thing that laid at the bottom. And it's Elpis, but it can be translated into hope, though it could also mean expectations. So when I was reading this, it also reminded me of how the Bible talks about the abyss opening up and allowing the darkness to take over, or in Western terms, hell. So to take over the world, and this is basically what Pandora's box is. And what is evil? Evil, or your mind and your heart's desires can overtake your soul. It's a proven fact that that's what happens, and it will devour your very existence. And one of the best ways and to find out where your heart is, because like I said in previous videos, is that sometimes people do not even realize what their heart's desires are. I read something, I think it was yesterday, on, if you ever wonder what your heart's desires are, um, just see where your mind wanders at. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you are when you wander. It could also mean that some being or entity or energy is wanting you to open up that Pandora's box, or make a contract saying, hey, you can do this if you want to. I'll help you out with it. Basically, that's what that can be. So, you really have to observe your heart's desires, especially when your mind wanders. And your mind itself, like I said, is a Pandora's box. If you're familiar with Hellraiser, it talks all about that. So with Hellraiser, it talks about the cube and how each person is trapped in a cube because they sign a contract with their desires, with their wants, their needs, things of that nature. Their wants and needs, or what they feel is truth, ends up actually being their death, or their entrapment, and they can escape from it. So, with that being said, the cube popped up, and the cube and Saturn are linked together, and I found something kind of interesting, and I'm still doing research on it, because it would have made sense if Saturn was the brightest star, but it's Venus, and Venus, from what I remember writing about, is Lucifer, the light bringer. So Saturn is the weakest out of all the stars that we can see. We can still see Saturn, but it's the weakest one out of all of them. And it goes with this site that I have open, and they say that Saturn, or I guess was also known as Kronos, goes by many different names. Saturn was jealous because the sun in the solar system doesn't produce as much light where Saturn is, so it's very cold there. And there's many hints that hell isn't hot. Western terms, hell is actually cold because it's the farthest away from the sun. And the Bible talks about the Son of Man, and so on and so forth. So the sun has, in a way, abandoned Saturn, so Saturn is jealous. And so that's what I gather, anyways. So with this cube, and I'm still trying to figure out why it's a cube, why they worship it so much. But I was doing some research, and if you can make a box, and then if you fold that box out, you can make it into a cross. And the cross is a major symbolism of religions themselves. So with that cross, you can fold it up into a box, and therefore you got Saturn worship. And in the Hebrew text itself, it talks about Elohim, Yahweh, things of that nature, which is related to Saturn. And with Saturn, also you got the rings around Saturn, right? But if you look Saturn from top view or bottom view, it looks much like the eye, much like an eye. It also looks like the eye of Ra. But it kind of proved, I kind of debunked myself on this, that Saturn is a second sun. But it's all good. So, but anyways, it still looks like an eyeball. So with the eye of Ra, it could be, the eye of Ra is to be said that it's the sun that they worship. But maybe it is to contradict themselves into worshiping Saturn. Maybe we're not supposed to talk about this, huh? Alright, so anyway, uh, so it looks like an eye. I mean, it looks like an eye to me. Um, and, where the rings is also used, it's also known as the Lord of the Rings, which is what the Queen of England has, Queen Elizabeth or whatever. And many other things. And on Queen Elizabeth's crown, it also has a cube on top. It's quite interesting. So it's all linked to Saturn. And you can also look at the name Israel. You can separate it from Israel, and from the side it's meaning Isis, Ra, and El, which is Elohim. And El is also 13. Like I said, there's two sides to 13. There's two L's. And that's what I'm still, looking into. There is L13 of creation, you want to constantly create things. And then there's L13 of destruction, which is the agenda of Saturn, or this cube technology, to keep you away from nature. So there's two L's. So I mean, never view L and 13 as a total negative thing, because there's two stories. There's two gods in the Western Bible. Never doubt yourself on that. So with this black box, it still makes me wonder what significant value this black box is. Why it's such a huge symbolism. Like even in I hope I get this right, the Muslims, they have a black cube set up, or a black box set up in their in Jerusalem or something like that. You need to research on that. But also they have in Australia, Denmark, Manhattan, and Santa Ana. They also have a cube set up over there. So cubes are everywhere, and Transformers even talks about it. In the 80s cartoon, they talk about the energon cubes that the Transformers were looking for, so they could stay alive. And this links into, because they're robots, technology. There's a picture on this website here that shows the Borg ship flying by Saturn, which is also linked. And what are the Borgs? The Borgs are also technology based. Want you to be a collective unit that is ran by a hive, which also comes into play with the insectoids. See the archons. What else is there? The Greys, so on and so forth. A collective hive, collective unit, a one voice, and channeling comes into play with this as well. But like I said, I'm trying not to make this video too long. So anyway, what is this black cube? Why is it so important? So it says on here, you might not know it, but the entire world has been worshipping Saturn for thousands of years. The cult has never stopped, and its rites are still present to this day. Saturn, dubbed the Lord of the Rings, is the reason why we exchange rings at weddings or put halos on the heads of godly people. This article exposes the attributes of the god Saturn and the whatever that word is, of his cult through in pop culture. Since ancient times, sage gaze at the stars, admiring their heavenly glow and attributing them godly powers. Which, that to me alone astonishes me, why our ancestors turned planets into worshipping idols. Like I said in a previous video, all the planets have stories, and those stories came onto Earth, and then humanity further made stories from the planets into humans, and it's just a big old mess. But the original thing with our ancestors was that they worshiped the planets, they worshiped the stars, because of energy based. So, this article exposes attributes of Saturn. Let's see. Our ancestors gazed at the stars, admiring their heavenly glow and attributing them godly powers based on their effects on humans. Before the Great Flood, Saturn was regarded by all mankind as the supreme god and ruler of the kings. Occult researchers affirm that Saturn ruled the kingdom of Atlantis and became the divine ancestor of all earthly kings. The cult has been perpetuated through Norse gods during and tranquility or something like that. Kronos or Saturn, Atlas or Hercules were all connected with a great Saturnian continent. They were kings that ruled over countries on the western shores of the Mediterranean, Africa and Spain. In Egypt mythology, Isis is considered Saturn's oldest daughter. Was instructed by Mercury, no one can destroy the laws which I established. I am the oldest daughter of Saturn. Semitic civilization referred to the god Saturn as El. The supreme deity was represented by a black cube. We can find instances of the cube across the world. Ancient Hebrews represented Saturn with a six-pointed star, which later became the Star of David. It also had many other meanings. The symbol is still found on Israel's flag. And with that, the Star of David, Israel's star, also looks like Morocco's star. Is symbolized by the cube. And from what I gather, I found some pictures of it, and the Star of David or the Morocco star is symbolized of time, because Saturn is the god of time. So with Saturn being the god of time and everything, that's what those stars represent, which is kind of interesting, and I gotta do more research on it. But the Star of David and Morocco's star are intertwined together, both worshiping Saturn, which is quite interesting, and it kind of confuses me because the symbolism of Morocco, but I don't know. I'm still doing research on it. So we got the Greeks and the Romans also worship Saturn as a cruel deity, because basically Saturn can also be known as Satan, or in this term, Pandora's box, which is Pan. Pan was a god with goat feet and horns, which also comes into the symbolism of Bel, the ox, and so on and so forth. So when the deposing of his father Saturn became the ruler of the universe for untold ages, and he reigned with his sister Ops, who also became his wife, he was prophesied that one day Saturn would lose power when one of his children would depose him. To prevent this from happening, each time Ops delivered a child, Saturn would immediately swallow it. When her sixth child, Jupiter, was born, so Jupiter is Zeus, Ops had him spirited away to the island of Crete. She then wrapped his stone in his swaddling clothes. Her deception was complete when Saturn swallowed it. Thinking it was the child, when Jupiter was grown, he secured the job of cupbearer to his father with the help of Gaia, his grandmother, the help of Gaia. So the earth was the grandmother of Jupiter. Jupiter fed his father a potion that caused him to vomit up Jupiter's 5 siblings. Yeah. Vesta, Sirius, interesting. Juno, Pluto, and Neptune. And Neptune is Poseidon, Pluto is Hades, Juno is Hera, Sirius is Demeter, and Vesta is Asteria, or however you say that. It's just, oh my gosh, this thing just goes on forever. But Saturn always had a negative, if not evil, significant in ancient times. It has been called the greater malefic, which was opposed to Jupiter, the greater benefic. Saturn is hysterically associated with men's limitations, restrictions, death, and decay. His Greek name was Kronos, the ruler of time. Time being the main focus, inevitably leading to the death of mortals. Traditionally representing of the Grim Reaper. Oh, that's interesting. So, traditionally representative of the Grim Reaper originates from the attributes of the god Saturn, who held the sickle with which he slain his father. Wow, that's interesting. Saturn has also been associated with Satan, and this for numerous reasons. First, many authors argue that the word Satan is derived from the word Saturn. Second, Saturn is associated with the color black as well as Satan. Third, ancients considered Saturn to be the furthest planet from the Sun, the later being associated with the principles of good. Note that Pluto never was considered a planet. Saturn is consequently the celestial body that is the less exposed by the Sun's divine light, and thus associated with the coldness of the principle of evil, which hell is really cold. Finally, the great god Pan, the horned deity, represented Saturn in ancient paganism. This half-man, half-goat creature is considered the ancestor of our modern depiction of Satan. Pan was a composite creature, the upper part, with the exception of his horns, being human, the lower part of the form of goat. The pipes of Pan signify the natural harmony of the spheres, and the god himself is a symbol of Saturn because this planet is enthroned in Capricorn, whose emblem is a goat. So Pan was depicted with horns due to the fact it represents Saturn, the ruler of the house of Capricorn, which is symbol is goat. Pan was a controlling spirit of the lower worlds. He was portrayed roaming through the forest, penis erect, drunk, and lascivious, frolicking with nymphs and piping his way through the wild. We might say he ruled the lower nature of man, its animal side, not unlike Satan. Basically just means that, that men themselves rule by their sexual instincts, or their animal instincts, I guess. Despite acknowledgement it's associated with evil, secret societies find the Mediterranean of Saturn necessarily to obtain illumination, Illuminati. It is a necessary counterpart of the principle of good. Masonic authors clearly associate Saturn with Satan. So I'll go ahead and stop because this video is already getting long. But yeah, so it's quite interesting. And with that being said, that's also where the Catholic Church come into play, or why the Greeks took Christianity and the false Jews and turned it into a male organized religion where they wanted males to be the dominant force. And you can read that in Sodom and Gomorrah, with them being sexually deprived, or they thrive on sex. They want to have, they want to do it with women with women, men with men, making their bodies unclean. This is where Pan comes into play. And you also got Peter Pan, and the Neverland, a world that just has boys on it. And you got Hook, that J hook in there. I didn't want to get into that. But anyways, that's why the Catholics focus so much on the male aspect. That's also what the cross represents, is two penises together, interlinked. But in Egyptian mythology, you got the circle around the cross that symbolizes the womb. But regardless, the two penises also represent the cross, which represents Pandora's box or the cube. So they're all interlinked, they're all intertwined with worshiping Saturn. And why Saturn is worshipped, or how that came to be, I don't know. But I found it quite interesting, and it seems that that this world is somehow entrapped by Saturn's story, anyways. And that's, you read in the Bible, with the abyss opening up, Pandora's box. So the whole basic of the story is, look at your life. Are you being controlled and run by your own mind? Is it overtaking you? The obstacles that you come into your life, do you realize that your mind is showing you what you're trapped in and what you need to work on? And also, look at your heart's desires and see if they really are yours or if they're someone else's. Because there's beings all around us, 24/7. There's always these beings, these energies that watch over us. I'm watching an anime called Death Note that has beings, entities that watch over us. They're called what are they called? The Shinigami, which if you look up in Japan, there are demons that control death, basically. But I'll talk about that later. But the reason why I brought that up is because it reminded me when I was doing research, or when I woke up in 2010, there's a select few people who were talking about beings to your guardian angels that are always by your side at all times. And they can end up being either your actual guardians, or they can actually be evil beings from Saturn that are watching over you to make sure that you don't go against Saturn's will, Satan's will. So yeah, that's where whole channeling and everything, you gotta stay away from that stuff. Even if it sounds good, you gotta stay away from it. Never allow a being or energy to go into your body, to go into your stream. You have all the information within you, and you need to focus on that. And you're going to also discover Pandora's box and all that when you look more and more within yourself. There's proven facts, there's beings all around us at all times, and they can influence you easy, and they can make you lose track. So I find it quite interesting. So so I gotta do more research on this black cube, because I need to figure out what it symbolizes. Is the black cube really just Pandora's box, or is it something more? And that's what I'm gonna find out. But so it's time to realize, pay attention to your surroundings. Are you trapped within your own Pandora's box? And as all these alternative scenarios, or this perceived time, or dates for that matter, people continue to be, oh my gosh, so focused on an end date. Somebody wants this planet to end. They constantly want a date. Humanity will never get a date, because time does not exist. Time only exists if you give time its energy, which is Saturn. You know, if you give time energy, then it will rule you and it will control you. And that's what's happening with all these people trying to estimate, oh, this time. There's something else I read. It's just reminding me. On wormwood, and there's something I read that the black cube actually was the wormwood or the meteorite that's talked about in the Bible, that it already landed here in the first place, which is a symbolism. Wormwood or the comet that's talked about in the Bible is a symbolism of that black cube or Pandora's box, which basically is telling humanity that they're trapped in their own reality, in their own realm, and that you have to get yourself out of it. Which just reminds me, that you can be part of, we'll use Christ's name, that you be part of Christ's collective, and that we are waiting patiently for the return of our creators to get us out of Saturn's box or Satan's box right now. There's just things that are so intertwined with each other. It's pretty uncanny. So I think I'm going to end this video. Like I said, it's just what I am doing research on right now, and maybe this will help you guys too, or maybe you got info for me about this black cube, because I find it rather interesting. So yeah, so do you have enough strength to break out of your Pandora's box? That is the question that I'm going to give you guys. Do you have enough strength to break out of the Pandora's box? And you even realize that you're in Pandora's box? Because if you pay close attention to your surroundings, you're going to realize that the world is not controlling you anymore. It's that your mind, your Pandora's box, is controlling you. You are creating your reality by your wave frequency, your vibrational frequency, and all that. Yeah. So anyways, I could keep going on. I gotta quit. So big question. Are you being run by your Pandora's box? And can you break out of it? So if you have any questions, let me know. Love yourself. Keep shining bright. Think before you act. Realize that your life, and treat your life as a business, and that you want to be successful in your business. And I still got to make a video about that. So make wise business decisions. So even if you are trapped in Pandora's box, you can get out of it if you're making good business decisions, because the wealthier you get, not physical money, but the wealthier you get with your business, which is your soul, the more successful you'll be in escaping Pandora's box. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, so I'll talk to you in a little bit.